All right, okay, good evening, everyone. Cool, okay, we'll get started for today's session over here. Okay, yeah, so as usual, what we're gonna do is we'll look into the events for the week. I'll then look into the technical analysis, sharing with you some of the outlook over here. And then before we end off today's session, we'll have a little Q&A, right? So if you have any questions, feel free to put it into the chat. And then from there on, I'll be able to monitor them and kind of answer a question along the way. Good. So let's start off by looking at the events calendar over here, right? So last week, kind of quickly sum up a little bit first. We did see the Fed actually pausing its rate hike, okay. But we'll kind of have a what we call a hawkish tone from the Feds because based on the press conference, they are talking about potentially two more hike in this year. Okay, so that will potentially bring the interest rate to about 5.75. But of course, they always throw in and say that they need to keep a lookout and see how things go before making a decision. Okay, but basically they are prepping the market in such a way that if they're gonna hike it, then there will be not much of a like sudden surprise. Okay, so but it's interesting, right? Basically, the dollar actually kind of weakened after that statement. Maybe we are just temporarily seeing some kind of profit taking or whatsoever. Okay. But just have in mind that the Fed's actually mentioned that they are likely gonna increase rates two more times. But we'll see. Okay. And Bank of Japan last week basically maintained its rate at negative 0.10. Okay. Kind of like where most of the central bank has been like hiking rates pretty aggressively. We are seeing that the Bank of Japan basically is still in its negative easing policy kind of range. Okay, so that also kind of explain if you're following the markets over here, you start to see news talking about how the Nikkei has hit its like 30-year all-time high. And of course, we have also seen the yen kind of weaken quite significantly against across again I think most of the currencies over here. Um, so one way to kind of interpret that is of course from the fundamental perspective where you know relative to other currencies, the Bank of Japan is basically in its easing mode, right? It's not increasing rates, it's still in negative territory, they're still basically printing money and things like that. So that's where we see the yen weakening. Okay, so that's kind of a quick wrap up from last week. Now, if you look into like this week here, we do also have a couple of central banks coming in. So today is basically the U.S. holiday. Okay, so you realize that the market is generally slow. Then going into Thursday, okay, we have the SMB. If you're trading the Swiss franc, right, just take note of that. The market is expecting a 0.25 hike. And then we have the Bank of England, right? BOE. So over here also another expectation is 0.25% hike. And then after that we have some Euro and kind of UK and US kind of PMIs, right? I don't think the PMIs are going to be the most important aspect for the focus for this week, but generally I think it's going to be Bank of England. Now, I don't think Bank of England is gonna pause rate so soon. Basically their inflation is still relatively very high. You can see over here, right? To Wednesday we have the bank. That's right. GBP CPI year on year. You can see it's still 8.4, which is very high. So looking at overall things here, I think the pound side of things doesn't mean that if it's gonna increase rates that the pound is definitely gonna strengthen. But the idea is we're gonna probably see some volatility kicking in. Okay, so just be aware of such events taking place for the week. Okay, good. So with that said, let's look at the technical charts over here. Okay. So first up, let's talk about the dollar index. Okay, so dollar index, as of last week, we kind of get a pretty impulsive drop. So I kind of updated my kind of analysis over here after the Feds and FOMC. Basically, right now I'm looking at a potential 5-wave move to the downside with the peak over here. Okay, I got cut off a while. Okay, but I think it's back online. Okay, but the idea basically is this is the peak, right? And we are looking at potentially 1, 2, 3. Wave 4 is currently developing, and then after that we may see another move back down to complete 5-wave down. Okay, so I mean, today we're starting to see a little bit of a bounce, right? A little bit of a retracement. This may be a little bit too shallow, okay, but the idea maybe we give it another 1 or 2 days. If we overall can get a very corrective nature for price to come back towards like this area at 102.58 to 102.90, and more importantly maintain below this level here at 103.36, right, or 103.40, then we can expect one more drop to complete the 5-wave move, and from there on maybe a bigger corrective move to the upside. Okay, so that's the general view on the dollar index, and that's basically my primary forecast for now, right? Of course, if you then put it into the euro side of things, we did get the impulsive move on euro dollar last week as well. So right now, kind of inverse to the dollar, we'll kind of see this as a 1, 2, 3. Wave 4 potentially developing, and then we expect one more pushback up. Okay, so overall you can see euro over here we have like some big moves up, big move down, and then big move up. Generally it seems to be like in a consolidation if you can zoom out. Okay, so I mean, we are going into a potential crossroads soon, right? And what I mean by that is the I mean, last year and this first half of this year is pretty clear in terms of where the central banks are heading. Okay, because of inflation, the central banks are generally in a hiking environment. But what I mean crossroad over here is that going into maybe the second half of the year towards next year, some banks would start to cut rates, some banks would start to stop hiking, and then some banks might still be hiking, and that's where we are likely going to see a little bit more of a trend environment. Okay, so this one here, if you take a look, like, you know, we have been in this tight consolidation for this year. Eventually when it breaks either up or down, okay, that's where we can get some nice little trend environment. Okay, so for now at least, you know, same thing here. If we give it another 1 or 2 days, if you can't see a corrective move back down around this area, 1.0550, 1.0850, 1.0890 or 1.09, and price is able to maintain above this level here at 1.07780, then of course we'll be expecting a little bit more upside, right, to complete the 5th wave up. Okay, so that's on euro dollar side of things. Pound dollar here as well. Okay, so generally the dollar kind of weakened last week, and then we kind of see quite a bit of like different currencies kind of strengthening, right? So quite similar. Basically we're expecting this as wave 3, wave 4, and wave 5. Once that's complete, then we may start to see a bit of a downside here. Okay, so in terms of like euro dollar and pound dollar, generally this week we're monitoring if we can get a corrective pullback towards the 236 and 382 area. That may present a buy opportunity for both the euro and the pound dollar. Okay, dollar Canadian, Aussie dollar over here. Short term, I'm expecting a slightly deeper pullback as compared to the euro and the pound. The reason is because this entire move here, we don't really see a very clear kind of structure, and right now I'm just taking this as one wave up, right? So this can be wave 1, this can be a wave A, and basically we're then expecting kind of pullback in 3 to complete either wave 2 or potentially maybe wave B over here, right? So usually for wave 2 or wave B, the retracement is going to be deeper, right? It's going to expecting somewhere around like 50 and 618. And that's the reason why you can see Aussie dollar, the expectation is slightly different, right? So if you're looking at maybe counter trend, you know, short-term move with the expectation of 50 to 618 retracement, then it may open up maybe some short-term sell opportunity. You know, depending of course on your style and your strategy, if you're interested in this. Okay, but if not, then you just want to be patient, wait for the pullback, and then look for a buy from there on. Okay. Dollar CAD over here generally is still bearish, but we may have completed this entire move here and start to see a little bit of a retracement. So this is kind of inverse to the Aussie dollar analysis, right? So Aussie dollar, we kind of get a one push up, and then we expect a pullback. So dollar CAD here, we kind of see a completed potential 5-wave down, and therefore a 3-wave pullback towards maybe the 50 and 618. Okay, so same thing here. If you're kind of counter trend, you can look for a reversal trade to the upside. If you're more of like trend following, then just wait for the pullback and then look for a sell opportunity from there on. Okay. Dollar yen. Okay, dollar yen kind of broke off this triangle over here that we had last week. Right now we're kind of testing the top of the entire channel structure, which mean soon to complete wave 5, right? I mean, this price has already broken previous high. Technically we can say that 1 2 3 4 5 is done, and then of course internally here we have also this tree up, so we have 1 2 3 near the top of the channel, right? So that's the reason for me to be neutral, and basically just to wait for price to develop further and see what we're gonna get. Okay. If you are more aggressive, of course, you can start to look out for sell opportunity and see if the yen may start to strengthen a little bit, especially in some of the other yen pairs. We have a very extended move. Again, I always highlight that in the FX environment, most of the time after an extended move, right, basically means that the price has moved in one particular direction for quite a significant amount of time, quite a significant price shift. There's a good chance that we'll see a deeper pullback eventually. Okay, it's just a matter of like when. Okay, and of course it's not like it must, but there's a high probability it will do it, right? So likelihood we'll start to maybe see a little bit of a strength coming into the yen. Okay, not an entire kind of like trend shift, but more towards kind of like a short-term pullback, kind of like some profit taking at the top, and then therefore the yen pair may come down a little bit. So I'm just being neutral over here on dollar yen in particular. Okay, and if you're again, as I mentioned, if you're aggressive, you're interested in counter trend, you can start looking for sell side. Alright, so that's on dollar yen. And then for gold over here, I think it's very interesting. Generally I have two scenarios that I've planned out over here. One is that we are following the yellow label, so basically this is 1 2 3, and then wave 4 is potentially still developing as an expanding flat, and then one more move to the downside. So that's one of the potential scenario that can play out. The alternative scenario over here is that this is 4, okay, and wave 5 basically is here, so basically 1 2 3 4 5 is done. And this is the start of a move, right? So 1 2, and then maybe this would start to break off impulsively as a 3, and then 4 and 5. Okay, so there are two potential scenarios, right? One is that we are likely to see an upshift. Okay, basically the down is done, and then we're looking at a new move back up. Or 2, okay, kind of face a little bit of resistance here in the market, breaks that previous low and come back down. So the key is obviously looking and paying attention to this area around like 1990, okay, and see how the price is going to react, right? Are we going to get a breakthrough? Are we going to face some resistance and then expect the price to bounce back down? But you realize that short term here, I think one thing you can note is we can still look for upside. Okay, the reason is again I would say doesn't matter which scenario I'm looking at, this is still the common ground, right? Common ground basically means both scenarios suggest that we'll see this upside first. The next part is either this or this, right? So what you can do from this perspective here is to look out for buy opportunity, buy go up, right? And then once we tag this area around 1990, then you either take profit, manage your trade accordingly, and just see if we can get this pushback to the upside, right? So I think gold is something that is interesting within the week. I think the setup may come to us maybe tomorrow or even like Wednesday, right? Because right now what we have is an impulse push. We do have a mini little 123 here. This may be ready to take off. Okay, if not, then you may just give it a little bit more time. Maybe it develops into something like that. And then maybe tomorrow or the day after, that's gonna be the setup for you. Alright, so that's on gold. Crude oil over here, generally we're expecting upside. Okay, but of course price move in waves. This one here seems to be completed a potential 3-wave move, so there's a good chance we'll see another 3-wave pullback. And then after that, a continuation back up, right? So overall, I think crude oil, we're just remaining bullish bias, and then we're expecting another pushback towards like $77.80. Okay. S&P over here, definitely bullish, but I think short term we just want to be a little bit more careful because same thing here, the market has basically extended quite a bit. So we're basically expecting kind of pullback. Same thing here towards 236.82 as a potential wave 4. Then one more pushback up. Okay. The trend on S&P is very obvious, it's bullish, right? There's no reason to be selling it. Especially, you can see, we're kind of breaking this kind of resistance zone quite impulsively. Okay. Clear off the entire piece there. So we are shifting into a bullish market already. But of course, with this kind of extended move, just wait for a pullback and then only get involved in the buy. Right? BTC here, I think we are also shifting towards a bullish environment. Okay, especially with this V-shaped formation here, with the bottom around 24,750. Okay, so any kind of corrective pullback, I think on BTC, you generally want to look for buy, right? I think this one here is going to be quite similar to even like Ethereum. Okay, so kind of see V shape, so we kind of get a corrective pullback, then of course we'll be looking at a buy, right? So Ethereum, this is Binance feed, right? I haven't really done my analysis on this chart in particular, but roughly you can then take a very quick look. Kind of same thing here with BTC, right? So we kind of get a 3-wave move, and essentially this may be the bottom, and then any kind of corrective pullback we can look for upside on Ethereum, right? So both BTC and Ethereum basically upside on that. Right. Yeah, so generally those are the markets that we cover. Okay. So I think the primary focus here, if you're looking at some of the currencies, would likely be the majors. Okay. I see how it's going to react in the next 1 or 2 days around the zone that we mentioned. Okay. Euro dollar and pound dollar, of course. And then in terms of gold here, I think the short-term direction is definitely focusing on buy opportunity. And then in terms of like longer term, you want to then manage that trade along the way. If you're looking at indices, then you might want to give it another 2 days or even 3 days and see if you can get a corrective pullback. If it is, then maybe end of the week we may get a buy. Okay, and in terms of crypto market, generally we're bullish for the week. Okay. Yeah, so those are the things that I have, right? Hopefully kind of give you some ideas on general market over here. Okay. Good. So quick one. Any particular questions that you guys have and would kind of like to have me talk about? Put it into the chat. Okay. Cool. Any, right? So okay, just seeing some asking about like franc. Okay, I don't personally look at the franc a lot. But I think we can just look at maybe dollar franc, or maybe euro franc in general. Kind of have quite a bit of like different mix environment for franc. Okay, maybe if you're interested, like in franc pairs because of SMB upcoming news, Um, I'll just quickly highlight a couple of franc pairs that's maybe noteworthy, okay, for you. I think one here is definitely cat franc. Looking at how potentially this may turn into a triangle. Now, if this is going to be a triangle, it's a trend continuation pattern, right? So basically, you see a shift up, a pullback, a shift up. A triangle is a trend continuation pattern, so basically means more upside, right? So if you're looking at cat franc, that's something to note. That's a clear pattern, right? So I'm gonna highlight on that. Aussie franc here as well. Okay, so potentially, we may get kind of a corrective structure over here for more upside. Okay, keynote is of course corrective. Pound franc here, a little bit careful because I think this here has a higher probability of a potential reversal. So if you take a look at your RSI, we're kind of getting from this peak to this peak, a divergence, right? So the idea is you may not want to be aggressively buying, but potentially looking at kind of a reversal setup. Okay. Euro franc not the best. Basically very choppy, right? So probably just want to focus like maybe on pound franc, Aussie franc, and cat franc if you're interested in that. All right. Cool. Okay. So some other questions I see over here. If one of you asking about NASDAQ. Okay. So NASDAQ over here. Okay, I don't have the labels on this chart. Okay. Let's see if I have another one there. Yeah, I don't have that. Okay, so maybe I'll just very quickly look at it. Yeah, this QQQ basically is the ETF, but never mind. We'll look at the futures here on Nasdaq, right? I don't have a label on the chart, right? But essentially, it's like the direction is likely going to be the same as S&P. Okay. And of course, if you just zoom in into the nearer term, you can see this is definitely impulsive, right? But this here obviously we have some kind of a divergence build up. Okay, so same as S&P generally, you just wait for a pullback. There's no reason to be buying at the top for now. So again, very simple. If you pull in some fits, right, to give you some guidance and expectation, the 50 and 618 will be an area there to monitor. You can obviously do a little bit of kind of like support resistance, which kind of coincides with 618. But do take note that price may not come down so deep, right? Especially in a kind of up move here on indices. Most pullback may not end up with 50 and 618. Okay, this is like in the indices market. When we get a pretty strong trend environment, right? So basically, you look at this, right? From this low here to this high, we don't really touch that 50, and then it just bounce off. Over here as well, from low to high, we don't really touch the 50, it bounce off, right? Maybe a little bit more on like the 382. I think that's a higher probability fit in terms of like the indices when we're doing in a very nice little trend environment, right? So you can see that. Okay, even in this environment over here, like from swing low to swing high, you can see, right, comes back nearer to 382. So maybe this one here as well, if you kind of look at it from the chances of where price would likely bounce, then you may want to then focus a little bit more on the trade 2 instead of like 50 and 618. Okay, so perhaps something like this, right? And then that would be an area that you look for buy. Okay, so that's on the Nasdaq side of things. Okay. Okay, Jason asks about gold. Okay, so I think you missed out on the front part that we mentioned, right? So just very quickly show you the analysis and drawing again here. Basically, we are expecting gold price in the short run to head higher towards like 1990. Once it hits there, then there are either two situations where price can break out and keep going higher, or price may face some resistance and come back down after it reaches around the zone of 1990, right? So the idea is short term, you look for buy, and then after that, you manage your trade, whether you want to take full profit, you want to shift stops, etc. Okay, basically manage your trade from there on and make a decision as to whether you want to hold it to the upside or just close it and look for a sell, right? Depending on how price is going to develop around 1990 area. Yeah, so that's gold in short. Okay, Jay has a question here. Aussie dollar is forming a flat pattern on a weekly time frame. Um, yeah, potentially, right? So let me maybe open up another chart so that it becomes clearer. Okay. So weekly time frame, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I think if you look at it from this angle here, yep, this is potentially flat. What can be is either this is a completed flat, right? So basically 1, 2, 3, or it may still be developing into a bigger one as to this is 1, this is the 2, and this may be a 3. Okay, and with that, then it's gonna push up. That's also possible. So something similar to this, right? So if you take a look at this, this can be a 1, 2, 3 and then push up, right? So before all this here, okay, then possible is the look of it is that this has completed that flat, right? So basically creative move, then you can expect more upside. But of course, just like I mentioned, what can happen is this can be 1, 2, and then 3. Okay, and basically that's what happened. Okay, so you can see like this. So if you take this pattern development here and then you put it here on the smaller scale, it's kind of similar onto that, right? So this can be a 1, 2, 3, which completed, or it can be basically a deeper one. Okay, so if you are looking at a weekly scale, I think that's what we'll probably be looking at. Okay. Okay. A50 and Hang Seng. Yeah, so if you're looking at A50 and Hang Seng, I don't personally trade this, but I think we kind of share. If you kind of look at the bounce there, pretty nice trade. Again, if you're following on like China market, this rally is because China decided to cut its midterm interest rate, right? I mean, moving into easing policy, and I always say this: when the central bank is going into easing mode, it's gonna benefit the equities market in general, right? So you can see that quite effective in the even in China shares, right? So for now, I think we may be seeing a little bit of a pullback over here. Okay, perhaps towards like somewhere around 50 and 618, back towards like this kind of like areas, right? So overall, I think we may be able to get a bit more upside. Okay, especially with the fundamental shift from Chinese government where they are cutting interest rate, right? In terms of their midterm. So general direction to focus is probably upside, okay, but you just maybe want to wait for a bit of a pullback before you get involved in the buy. Okay. I think then generally Hong Kong is gonna follow suit, right? Because I mean Hong Kong and China are quite closely related in terms of the direction of how they move. So same thing here, you may get a little bit of a pullback. Whether it's gonna come down so deep, not necessary, but after any pullback, I think the general direction on Hong Kong and A50 China shares, right, likely is gonna maintain upside for now. Okay. Okay, one of you is asking about pound Canadian, right? So pound Canadian over here, I would say short term we're probably gonna see a little bit more downside, right? So in terms of like expectation, probably around that 50 and 618 is very possible. Yeah, other than that, after this here, we may really need to see how the market is going to react off here, because this entire piece is not really very clear. I'm seeing potentially, this can be a expanding structure where this just keeps falling and break through that. That's one possible way of looking at it. Alternatively, this can be a completed 3-wave, so this can then be another 3-wave bounce, right? So I think this is quite similar to the view on how we approach gold, okay, short-term downside. But once it tags this area, you want to look out for, how it's going to develop, what's the reaction there, are we going to get this or are we going to get this, right? But short-term, can focus on a little bit more downside. Okay. Mo has a question. Can you show how to label XBR on the 4-hour chart? XBR is UK Brent, right? 4th of May, which is basically this low, right? Okay, I always start off looking at it from the simplest form of pattern, right? So we basically have this low and then, we don't really have this lows breaking that. So what I would just do is a very simple, or I would say the simplest form of forecast is basically looking at a very simple corrective pattern. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, right? This may be the 3, then another maybe 1, 2, 3, right? So basically I'm looking at a WXY. So 3-wave up, 3-wave down, potentially 3-wave up, right? So very, very straightforward kind of like forecast and outlook, right? So that's how it looks like, right? I mean, the details of it, you can see. So maybe this will pull back a little bit more. And then from there on, then look at last move up. So this may be quite similar to, like crude oil potentially, right? So you can see here, pull back and then upside, right? So that's quite similar to the outlook that we're looking here in Brent, okay? Pull back and then upside. Okay, so yeah, so I always start off and look at it from the simplest point of view as we can. Okay, so this one here I think is the simplest of all would be a simple WXY, okay, 3-wave move. Okay, yeah, good. Last one here I see is Dow Jones. Dow Jones. Yeah, so Dow Jones, I would see it. This may not be the best pattern of all, but if I were to label this, yeah, this is not the clearest of all, but probably this is, what can happen over here, right, is this can be wave 3 here and this can be wave 4 and potentially this basically wave 5 because we do have a divergence build up here, okay, or this can be wave 3 of course and this is wave 4, okay. The issue with, again, if you want to go into complexity of labeling, the issue here is if this is going to be wave 3 at the peak here, internally we don't really have a clear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Usually we will see that, right? And then of course if I put here as wave 3, this is wave 4, usually we don't like to see wave 3 just like that. It's valid because it's not the shortest, but usually wave 3 we always look at it as the longest, right? And with that said, then what potentially can be the case is this is wave 3, maybe wave 4 development, and then wave 5 is yet to be done. Okay. Maybe that's the case, right? And then if that's the case, then wave 3 over here internally we get another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Maybe that's how it's likely gonna be. So having said all this, if you're gonna follow with this kind of forecast, then wave 4 pullback, okay, generally will come back to the internal of wave 4, so somewhere there, and then we'll get a pushback up, right? And I think in terms of like fips, if you're gonna pull like wave 2 to wave 3, we're gonna get a very nice like 382 area as well. Okay, so usually it coincides very nicely, right? And of course, if you are into like support resistance, we have that zone there. Okay, so I think generally equities you realize is the same, right? S&P pullback upside, and then NASDAQ pullback upside, Dow Jones is the same, right? pull back in the upside. Good. Yeah. Okay, last one here I see is Pound New Zealand, right? And then after that we'll wrap up the session for today. Okay. Pound New Zealand, I think my take over here very quickly. We don't really have a hidden divergence. Okay, so maybe what I'll take over here in terms of forecasting would be a simple pattern that looks like this. And the forecast would just be very simple. This can be an internal three-wave down, and then we're expecting basically this is X, and then a bigger move here. Okay, so likelihood is this probably will come down a little bit, go back up a little bit, and then come back down a little bit to complete a bigger flag, and then push back up. So maybe short term you want to focus on this side, right? Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of like patterns, maybe something similar here, right? So you just basically duplicate and put it there. May not be exactly the same, but kind of something like that. Okay, good. Yeah, so I hope today's kind of sharing, okay, I will try to keep it within like 30 minutes. Does give you some ideas and insights into the market. Okay. Yeah, so hopefully by answering some of the questions over here, giving you some ideas, will help you in your own trading too. Here, so usually we'll update you guys in terms of like some of the upcoming events that we have. I think for June, let me just double check in my calendar. I think for June we don't really have anything else for offline event. Okay. But in July, I'll be speaking in terms of offline event, right? I'll be speaking in 3 events over here. One will be on the 8th of July, and then the other one is going to be on the 15th of July and 22nd of July. Okay, so maybe I just very quickly put it down here for everyone to note. 8th of July, the content that I'll be talking about is crypto trading. Okay, if you would like to find a little bit more, it's an offline event, so you need to be based in like Malaysia and Kuala Lumpur. Okay. And then on the 15th and 22nd of July, I'll be talking about market correlation, okay, and how we can use market correlation to kind of potentially craft out a strategy, a trading approach using market correlation to make some profits from the market itself. Okay. So again, it's a little bit far off because right now we are just basically 19th of June, so we still have a couple of weeks. But I just want to give you guys some heads up. For those of you in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, okay, you may want to lock in some of those dates here. They're generally on Saturday, okay, so that when nearer to the dates, when we have more information, then I'll update you guys from there, right, in terms of like the timing, the location, etc. But for now, tentatively, these are the dates and the topics that we've prepared. Alright, so that's all from me. All the best. Okay, of course, yeah, before I forget, right, those of you who like to keep in touch in terms of like all these events over here or any upcoming future events that we have, if you're in Zoom, feel free to just click on the WhatsApp link. Okay, it'll direct it to the team, which will be able to support you for any questions for those events. And then if you're on YouTube, okay, you can go over to the description box, right? And of course, if today you're watching here on trading.live, I'm not sure how you guys can get connected. Okay, yeah, but basically, if you're watching like on trading.live, just find my social media and then reach out to me if you're interested in any of this. Okay. Good. So that's all from me. All the best to your trading for this week. And until then, manage your risk, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Okay. So see you guys. Bye bye.